People often say to me that it's all about the money when it comes to retaining salespeople. That when a good salesperson resigns, it's because they were poached by the competition with this ridiculous offer that just couldn't be matched. But what if I told you that all is not what it seems when it comes to retaining salespeople? There are many impactful things that you can do to keep them, and a lot of it has very little to do with money, and a lot more to do with what is going on in their minds. That's why in today's episode of Lead to Grow, we're going to unpack what you need to do to keep your good salespeople. If you have a salesperson in your team that you want to hold on to, then you might just want to stay tuned for this one. Lead to Grow is a podcast that decodes the people principle, how human success drives business performance. Retaining salespeople is a big one when it comes to that. I'm your host, Tommy Sim. Why do many people think that retaining salespeople is mostly about the money? Well, let's see. The job of a salesperson is to generate revenue and profit for the company. In turn, for the most part, they receive a share of that revenue or profit. If you have a commission structure, they seem to be striving to achieve that commission. Then they ask for an increase to their base salary at remuneration review time, even though they've already received a large chunk of comps. Many spend their money on flashy items such as fancy cars, nice watches, exotic holidays, and then after all that, they leave you for a better offer. So on the surface, it makes sense to draw the conclusion that for salespeople, it's all about the money, but it's actually not. Let me explain. Whilst more money is great and we can buy more things, better things, it's mostly just the scoreboard for salespeople, even if they don't realize that. Which brings me to a basketball analogy. It's been a while since the last one. So imagine you're part of a basketball team and someone said to you, "Hey, good news, you scored 20 points today," but you didn't actually score them. They were just allocated to you on the scoreboard. Now, technically, you've got the points, the result looks good, but would that actually make you want to keep turning up to the game each week? For some of you, yes, but most probably not. It'd feel a little hollow because what makes people want to play the game is not just the score, it's the experience of playing. The score matters because it reflects what actually took place, that we made a difference for the team. Besides any personal reasons or injuries that might get in the way, the reason we keep turning up will be based on the answers to the following questions. Do I have a role here? Is that role actually important to the team? Do I feel like I'm part of the group? Do I get to do the thing I'm best at? Maybe it's shooting threes, driving to the basket, posting up. Are the roles stable? Or does the lineup change from week to week? One week you're the starting point guard. The next week you're coming off the bench and playing small forward. And do things feel fair? Does everyone get a reasonable share of the ball and taking shots? Are people running back on defense with the same level of effort? Or is there someone who just keeps hogging the ball, throwing up bricks, turning the ball over, not playing defense, and somehow they're getting all the opportunities? Your salesperson is like that leading scorer on the basketball team. If they get to be their best self and the team is winning, they're likely to stick around on the team. The points matter for sure, but only as it is a reflection of their abilities and success. They like to talk about their wins and scoring. This provides a social reward. The reward they're after might seem like it's money, but what it really is what money represents. Success, winning, capability, and admiration. Social status. The fancy car and watches tell people and themselves that they're successful. Therefore, what salespeople are reacting to are the social signals around them that indicate that they are where they should be. I'm on the right team and in the right league. And those signals are often what determine whether someone leans into an idea, a leader, or an organization, or starts quietly working against it. Let's break this down using a model that I think is an excellent lens for understanding whether someone feels in with an idea, leader, or group, or out of it and starting to distance themselves. This framework is called the SCARF model, which is developed by David Rock. What the model suggests is that when we interact with other people, our brain is constantly scanning the environment for social threats and social rewards. And depending on what it detects, we either start moving towards something, meaning we support the idea, the person or decision, or we start moving away from it and resisting. Now, the model identifies 5 social drivers that strongly influence this response: status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. When those things are supported, people tend to engage, contribute, and cooperate. But when we feel threatened, people often become defensive, resistant, or disengaged, sometimes without even consciously realizing why. So if we go back to that basketball example for a moment, most of the things we're talking about map directly to those social drivers. Do I have a meaningful role in the team? That's status. Is the lineup stable or changing every week? That's certainty. Do I feel free to play the role I'm good at? Like you catch the ball in your best spot to score and someone yells pass. Like that's autonomy. Do I feel part of the group? That's relatedness. Is the playing time, shot selection, and similar matters fair? That's fairness. So now what we'll do is we'll overlay the SCAR framework with salespeople, and then I'll provide some tangible actions to take that we hit across multiple areas of the SCAR framework. Let's start with status. Status matters to everyone. Now, you might not think it matters much to you, but it does. What differs is how we view status. For example, it can be as simple as people recognizing your knowledge on a topic or being consulted on matters of importance. For salespeople, it can also vary. Whilst there are some generalizations that exist, for example, salespeople are generally more likely to want to drive a nice car, but not all salespeople will care about the car. What status means is, how do I compare to others? An example that you might relate to, if you're a manager, is if you have a staff member who finds out the salary of a colleague, or they catch up with like a cousin or a friend who they think is not as capable. Or perhaps that other person is just early in their career. Now, one day they're completely happy with their pay or happy enough. The next day they're miserable purely because they now feel bad that this other person who they view themselves as kind of a bit better than them is paid more than them or close in pay or a bit too close than it should be. Now, it does take a high degree of maturity to not let this affect you, but it does affect a lot of people naturally. Status is a big part of our self-identity, which is how we view ourselves. You might more easily think of it as our ego. We want to protect our self-identity at all costs because if who we think we are is not true, our world caves in. So if your behavior is diminishing a salesperson's view of who they are, they don't want to be around that. Certainty. The brain hates uncertainty. It takes a lot of brain energy and creates a threat response. So we need to either remove ourselves from the situation or else start to think of the worst case scenario to establish that certainty. You know, it's like there was this awkward interaction or something you think is not really going well. Well, whether you're an optimist or pessimist, your mind either goes, she hates me, or she probably didn't even notice. Either way, you don't want to sit in that uncertainty. For salespeople, this could relate to constant changes that are taking place to commission structures, sales processes, even views on their performance. Uncertain career progression could be an issue, or even if the company's not performing well. These can make their mind want to go towards certainty, which could actually just be moving to another business and away. Autonomy. Autonomy is about whether I feel I have the freedom to make the decisions in the areas I feel I should own. The most obvious area that can be a source of tension is when salespeople feel micromanaged. This can happen when there is a change from a more loose or free style of management to one that focuses more on activities and or selling in a particular way. I'm not saying that you shouldn't have a closer level of management because sometimes a new sales leader has identified that existing practices are kind of not very disciplined. For instance, if you've got people not logging meetings on the CRM, that can create a risk for the business and you might need to address that. So there could be a good reason for wanting tighter controls. This is different to the fact that some salespeople, their brains, may take it as diminishing their autonomy. So managing this change carefully and effectively becomes very important if you want to retain people. Relatedness. Relatedness is about whether you're in or out of the group. For salespeople, they can be at risk of not feeling part of the group due to the time spent out on the road with clients. I know this has changed a bit since the rise of video meetings. However, there can still exist the feeling that the rest of the business just doesn't understand their world. They don't deal with clients and prospects. And if they don't understand what it's like, then the salesperson can feel a bit like, well, I'm stuck out here on an island, you're all over there, not getting it. Fairness. Fairness is another big one. Think about when you're on holidays in Thailand and you're bargaining for that t-shirt, which could cost about $5 or $10. Now you want it for $5, they want 10. They get down to 8 and your last price was 7. Then so you go to walk away as a bargaining tactic, hoping they'll chase you down the street, but they don't. Then you don't get the t-shirt and later on you regret not buying it. Why did you walk away when that same t-shirt would cost at least 3 times that amount elsewhere? You just didn't want to feel like you're being ripped off. So fairness comes into play in sales roles in many ways. Besides pay that we've already mentioned, which is a key part of status, They may feel that decisions related to the allocation of accounts or leads or simply the amount of work your best person has to shoulder can come into play. Fairness can also extend to their close colleagues. So if their colleague, who's also their friend, is treated unfairly in their eyes, then this can affect their sense of fairness. We've established that retention of salespeople is much more about what's going on in their minds than it is about money. That whilst money is important, it's about what that money represents as a scoreboard for salespeople. It's that when people view salespeople through the SCARF model, we can see that retention comes down to status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. So what should you do to retain salespeople? Here are some practical tips that the better sales leaders conduct that assist with retention. Number 1, conduct monthly one-to-ones that focus on the human. Besides your observations of your sales team to learn what makes them tick, one very practical way to learn more about the individual is through monthly one-to-one meetings. These need to be the right kind of one-to-one. This meeting should be focused on the human being, not the operational work. It's not about the pipeline, the targets, or whether they've hit their number. That can be a separate conversation. The purpose here is to understand how they're actually going. A very simple question works well. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much have you been enjoying your work lately? Whatever number they give you, explore it. So if they say 7, ask, what are the good things that make it up to a 7? Spend some time in the zone and really understand what energizes them, what they enjoy about their job. And then ask, what's holding it back from being a 10? This opens the door to understanding what's going on in their world before it becomes a bigger issue. It's also an opportunity to reflect on their wins, what they've learned, their shared experiences that they have with you. Also, talking about their career development is a valuable topic. Perhaps also gaining their feedback on changes implemented or recent presentations could form part of the discussion. Conducting effective monthly one-to-ones is a great way to reduce surprise resignations. I can't stress enough how important it is to do this regularly because things can change in people's lives and work just like that. So you need to create a safe environment for them to talk with you because if they are generally scared of you, then it won't work. Resignations might look like it's sudden to the leader, but it's usually the salesperson has been mentally checking out for months before they actually resign. These conversations help you catch those signals early. The second thing is recognition, recognition, and recognition. It is one of the most powerful leadership tools out there, and for a long time it's just been sitting there unused in the corner of the room. It's free, it's relatively unlimited, it's powerful in communicating what you want someone to keep doing and builds a stronger bond with the salesperson. Now you want to become really, really skilled in genuinely recognizing something very specific that aligns with their self-identity. Your recognition needs to be proportionate as well. Like if you recognize something that's trivial, that relates to what's not important to them, then this can sometimes be even worse than doing nothing at all. Do you notice how excellent they are in prospect and client meetings? What exactly is it that makes them excellent? Do you know what it means to them? Can you tell others about this without it seeming contrite? So the thing about it is if you're genuinely noticing and appreciating it, it's easy. I once saw this salesperson land this significant deal after months of work and they brought it to the leadership team. And you know what the response was? Good work. That was it. There was no curiosity about what they did, no unpacking about how they approached the client, no celebration of the effort that they went into. That moment might seem small, but it was a huge opportunity missed because recognition isn't just about making someone feel good, it's about reinforcing the behaviors you want to see again. So here's the thing. You need to be working alongside them with those important deals that are taking up their time and energy. Because if you do this, it gives you 3 benefits. First, you get to see their work and therefore create opportunities for recognition. And this helps you to have credibility if you have development areas that you need to discuss later. Second, you form this bond. You have this shared experience, shared emotions together. And so if you're experiencing the wins, the losses, the excitement, the disappointment, frustration, and elation together, you are forming that bond. And that means something. People don't want to walk away from that too easily. Recognition supports elevating that person's status. It solidifies certainty because they know that you're seeing their good work. And it helps autonomy because it reaffirms that you have confidence in them on the task. And finally, it supports relatedness because they feel, hey, I'm part of this group. I'm part of what goes on here. And of course, fairness. If you need to provide constructive feedback later on, they see it as being more balanced. Here's a practical action. Put a private reminder in your calendar to find an opportunity to recognize something specific that each salesperson has done that week. What was the behavior? What was the impact? What is the appropriate way to recognize them? For example, do you let them know privately? Do you do it publicly? Do you provide a reward or a symbol, something like that? And make sure it is reflective of what took place and mix it up as well. This also does another thing for you. It forms a bond for you with this salesperson, which increases your genuine care for the human being, which then leads you to be a better leader for that person. One final thing on recognition. Is there anything that is making them feel not recognized? Have they stepped out to bail you out of a bind, then missed target by 1%, and you haven't factored that into their overall evaluation? Yes, that's why you get the big bucks as a leader of a salesperson. There's ambiguity you need to navigate through. Number 3, incentives. Now, incentives are a double-edged sword. They can help you retain good salespeople if they're attractive compared to what they could get elsewhere. It can support their status as a high-income earning person, which then helps them to feel valued at work, at home, amongst their friends. It's more helpful for the existing team than for prospective employees because they don't trust it yet. But it can also be a negative thing against fairness in terms of the scarf model. If one person is handed some easy accounts and they're receiving big commissions, and another person is just working really hard just to get like less than half of that, as Alec Baldwin says in Glengarry and Glen Ross, coffee is for closers. The system should reward the people who actually close the business. But here's something that leaders sometimes overlook. Even in sales roles, base salary still matters. Also, if you're making too many changes to the incentive structure, it can create a level of uncertainty that becomes untenable. If you really want to know this topic in depth, you should check out the episode on incentives, which is called Don't Lock in Your Commission Plan Until You've Heard These 9 Rules. Commission might be where the upside is, but base salary is where people often interpret the organization's view of their worth. I'm not saying it's rational, it's just a common perspective. So ignoring the base salary can diminish their sense of status and fairness. A lot of sales teams do this already, but don't forget about status rewards, such as trips, exclusive training opportunities, industry events, experiences that recognize the people performing at the highest level deserve it. These sorts of rewards tap into the competitiveness and status in a way that salespeople often respond strongly to. And there's an important design choice. If everybody gets the reward, then it's simply a perk of working at the company. But if only the top performers get it, then it becomes a status signal. Neither approach is inherently wrong or right. It just depends on what kind of culture you want to create. If you want a highly competitive sales culture, then having exclusive rewards can be very powerful. And one final point, salespeople experience more losses than almost anyone in the organization. That's the nature of selling. So when they win, those wins matter, and they should be recognized and celebrated because those moments help balance out the psychological load of the job. Okay, here's one practical action. So ask your top performer to explain the commission structure on the back of an envelope. If they can't do that, it's too complex and not understood. Now get them to rate it on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of fairness. How well does it reward the best performers versus others? Number 4, career development. Now there's an inherent conflict when it comes to career development and salespeople. On the one hand, you want to retain them and help them see continued growth. But on the other hand, you really just want them to keep selling. The two choices people often make, both of them wrong, are to either promote your best salesperson to being a sales manager, even if they're totally not suited to people leadership, or to simply put your head in the sand. And again, that's not a good option either. Instead, do this. Have multiple levels of salesperson, formally defined and properly earned. What is the job title? Do they get invited to senior meetings? Do they get a different car, higher base salary? Are they now mentors? Know that there is a big difference between being a mentor and a full people leader. Mentors, they share their knowledge, their experience, and they help guide someone else in their career. Mentors are different from managers. Mentors might help someone think through a situation or pass on lessons they've learned along the way, but a key difference is they're not responsible for that person's performance. And that's an important distinction because when you're a manager, there is this natural tension in the relationship. Now, when I say tension, I don't mean that it has to be tense between people. It doesn't mean conflict. It means that there are competing pressures that the manager has to balance. Think of it like it's like a rope that holds a boat against the jetty. That tension in the rope is actually what keeps the boat where it needs to be. Now, managers have to hold that kind of tension all the time, right? They need to get the best performance out of their team without burning them out. They need to manage costs while each person still feels that they're paid fairly. And they need to balance the expectation of their own manager with the realistic capacity of their team. Those pressures sit with the manager. Whereas if you think about a mentor, they don't carry that same responsibility, which is why asking a senior salesperson to mentor others is often a much smaller leap than asking them to become a full people leader. They can share their experience, help others grow, and contribute to the development of the team without having to step into the complex balancing act that comes with managing people. And they can still be that excellent salesperson. Think of your top salesperson as being that industry expert, seen as that person internally and externally. And of course, yes, elevating their profile externally might give rise to people wanting to poach them, but trying to hold them back is playing not to lose. That is, if you're fearful of losing them, much like a lot of other relationships, that behavior will keep pushing them away anyway. As the saying goes, build them up so that everybody wants to poach them, then treat them so well that they never want to leave. If you don't focus on their career, you're potentially diminishing their status when in fact you have the opportunity to elevate it without even changing their role as such. You may add a few things to it, but by acknowledging their seniority and value through your job level structure and associated salary increase, you can maintain their status and enhance retention. Career development plans also can reduce uncertainty about the future. It can make them feel like they belong to that future and feel that opportunities are fairly given to those who earn them. So here's a practical action. Note down the different levels of salesperson that exist within the same role. Normally there is where people start, then where they get to when they're like a fully seasoned professional, and then when they are at that most senior sales level. Define what the difference is in accountability, in capability, and results. Importantly, develop salary bands and other status differentiators, e.g. title, that clearly demonstrate the tangible difference in what each level gets. Number 5, provide the tools to be successful. None of this works if the salesperson is trying to operate inside a system that's fundamentally broken. I've seen this pattern many times. A capable salesperson joins full of enthusiasm and then slowly becomes frustrated because the organization simply isn't set up to support good selling. The leads aren't there. The CRM is messy. Marketing material is outdated. The sales process is unclear. When that happens, even very motivated people start to feel like they're pushing uphill all the time. If a top salesperson isn't able to be as successful as they would like because the business is not set up for success, this is a surefire way to subliminally be showing them the exit. What's worse is to sugarcoat the situation in order to convince them to join, only for them to find out that you exaggerated how good things were. What's worse is to sugarcoat the situation in order to convince them to join. If you exaggerate how good things were, or they feel misinformed, or you even lied to them, this is bad. How this relates to Scarf is that they don't feel like they have the autonomy to do what they do best because they're constantly hamstrung by the organizational deficiencies. This then diminishes their status because they become less proud of their organization. So here's a practical action. In fact, here are 8 items to check off that you want to have answers of no to, and you'll be in a good place. If you got answers of yes, then you have some work to do. Number 1, when they were deciding to join your business, did you talk about a strong pipeline of leads or referral partnerships, but the reality hasn't matched what was promised? Number 2, are they working with outdated or non-existent marketing collateral when they're speaking to clients? Number 3, is the CRM underdeveloped, poorly implemented, or effectively non-existent, meaning opportunities and relationships aren't being tracked properly? Number 4, is the sales process clunky or unclear, so it's harder than it should be for someone to move a deal from first conversation through to close? Number 5, are salespeople mostly left to work out the sales strategy for themselves, where to focus and how to win business? Number 6, are they expected to know the products without having proper training? And do they need to fend for themselves when it comes to working out the target market and how to win their business? Number 7, is there a gap? in terms of a clear example of what good selling looks like in your business. That there is no proven way that someone successfully sells to your target customers. And number 8, is there a lack of operational, customer service and admin support that they need? Or are they spending too much time doing work that takes them away from actually selling? Now, just one other thing on prospecting. If you want a salesperson to be making outbound calls or using a particular method of closing deals, there has to be that role model to demonstrate its success. And if you only have one salesperson, then that person's manager or some other party needs to be demonstrating how it works. Otherwise, you're potentially having a salesperson spinning their wheels, which is demoralizing and will create this tense situation between the two of you. They won't respect what you have to say because you can't show them how it works. This will be the beginning of the end. Okay, the 6th thing is a sense of belonging. One way I think about belonging at work is what I call the doctor in the small town phenomenon. If you imagine a doctor who moves to a small country town, they're not just another person there. They become the doctor. Everyone in the community knows who they are. People trust them. They can see the impact of their work every day, helping families, treating kids, supporting people when they're sick. That creates a really strong sense of identity and belonging. They're not interchangeable. They feel like they matter to the community. Now compare that to a doctor working in a huge hospital system where they're one of hundreds. The work might technically be the same, but psychologically it feels very different. You can start to feel like you're just another number in the system. And this shows up in sales teams all the time. If a salesperson feels like a dispensable number, it tends to look like this. Accounts just get reassigned frequently. Commission structures keep changing. Leadership only talks to them about targets and numbers. When a deal is won, the company takes credit. When a deal is lost, the salesperson gets the blame. In that environment, it's pretty easy for someone to think, yeah, this place will keep going whether I'm here or not. And once someone feels like that, it becomes very easy to justify leaving. Then they're not walking away from people who rely on them. In their mind, they're just walking away from a system that extracts revenue for the owners. So the practical action, regardless of the size of the team, treat your salespeople like they're a small town doctor with their clients and accounts. For example, establish what the salesperson needs to feel complete ownership of client relationships. Implement ways for them to get to know their clients on a more personal level. Regularly consult them on what they're seeing in the market and take on board their feedback. Make sure deals and client wins are recognized properly and help the internal teams establish a strong sense of a service delivery mindset to treat the salespeople like an internal client. Now the salesperson starts to feel like, hey, I actually matter here. They're not just hitting numbers, they're helping clients succeed. They're part of a team and people really rely on them. And that changes everything. Because now that they think about leaving, it's not just a financial decision. It feels more like leaving the town without a doctor. Clients lose someone they trust. The team loses someone important. People notice, and that feeling that you're an important part of a community rather than a replaceable cog is one of the strongest drivers of loyalty that you can create in a sales team. And if leaders get that right, retention becomes a lot easier. If they get it wrong, no amount of commission or whatever will compensate the feeling of being disposable. Now, the 7th thing is don't ignore creating a psychologically safe environment. This next one is incredibly important and it can do all of the good work that you've done in previous points. You must not create an environment that is psychologically harmful to your salespeople. And unfortunately, this can happen more easily than people realize, and it goes against every part of the SCARF model in one go. Things like backstabbing within the team, public humiliations in meetings, dressing someone down in front of others, or assigning blame when a deal falls over. These sorts of things damage trust very quickly. Another situation where I've seen is when the leadership makes crazy promises to clients in the market, and when it catches up with them, the pressure gets pushed straight onto the salesperson and they feel that they can't succeed. This salesperson is carrying the stress of commitments that they didn't even make. Once people feel psychologically unsafe, the sense of belonging disappears very quickly. Think of like a sandcastle just being crushed. Instead of feeling like they're part of a team trying to achieve something together, they start to be in survival mode. And this doesn't need to be a repeated pattern for the behavior to damage somebody. Sometimes it's just one significant incident, one public humiliation in a meeting, one situation where someone is just blamed and left out to dry. And that is the moment that the salesperson just feels like, I am done with this. Those stick with people. It's like an injury to their brain. It's like being punched in the face emotionally. And it can fundamentally change how they feel about the organization. They still show up physically, but psychologically they're gone. And once that process starts, it becomes much easier for them to justify leaving. So as a leader, you need to take those moments very, very seriously, because protecting the psychological safety of your team isn't just about being nice. It's about protecting the environment that allows high performers to stay and do their best work. The practical action around this one is not what you should do, it's what you shouldn't do. So what I recommend you do is listen to the Lead to Grow episode titled Raise Your Floor to Become a Better Leader. Let's bring this all together. If you want to retain a great salesperson, this isn't really about money. It's about the environment they're operating in every day. Money is a scoreboard, but what actually drives whether they stay or go is what that scoreboard represents: status, certainty, autonomy, relatedness, and fairness. And that shows up in a handful of very practical things. Treat them like an individual and understand how they see themselves, using one-to-ones to stay close to it. Be deliberate with recognition, not generic praise, but specific reinforcement of what good looks like. Get incentives right so they're clear, fair, and stable, whilst remembering the base salary and status rewards still shape how valued someone feels. Create real career pathways so people can grow, gain status, and mentor others without being pushed into management. And make sure they have the tools to succeed, because if the system is broken, even great salespeople will disengage. Build that sense of belonging so they feel like they matter, more like the small town doctor rather than just another number. And finally, protect psychological safety, because sometimes it only takes one moment for someone to start checking out. Salespeople are really good at reading environments. They quickly work out whether the business is helping them succeed or simply expecting them to carry the load. And once they've made that call, the behavior follows. So if you can get this right, you're not just retaining someone, you're creating an environment where good people actually want to stay and perform. When a salesperson leaves, it's often a build-up of small signals about whether they matter, whether they can succeed, and whether this is somewhere they want to build their career. And when those signals point in the wrong direction for long enough, people move on. And when someone leaves and says it was for more money, don't just take it on face value, because more often than not, money is the justification. The real reason is the environment they experienced before they even took that call. Leadership doesn't grow by accident. It grows because you choose to work on it. Thanks for making the time today. I'm Tommy Sim, and this is Lead to Grow. If you found this episode helpful, feel free to share it with someone who might also get value from it. If you're watching on YouTube, you can like the video and subscribe to the channel to see future episodes. If you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, you can follow the show. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, a 5-star rating or short review really helps more people discover it. New episodes come out regularly. Hope to see you again.